good. This is working. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's episode of Paranormal Encyclopedia on our new night, which is, of course, Sundays. Um, Unfortunately, I am by myself tonight. Brian McKinley certainly was going to join us, but it's really hot here. The only AC in my apartment's in my bedroom, which is not a suitable place for filming. So I had to film it a little too late at night to have Brian come out. When it cools off or we come up with another good solution, we'll start having him on again. But yep, tonight's episode is going to be talking about prophecy, more specifically about false prophets. This is a pretty big issue in my opinion. My apartment's in my bedroom. There we go. Hey Lisa, how are you? Um, I'm going to talk. I've already talked a little bit about people I would consider false prophets or at least false teachers in my soapbox episode about Kent Hovind and Ken Ham. But I'm going to try and be a little more general because they're the tip of an iceberg. Of the fact there are a lot of people in the world that say they come in God's name who don't. And many of whom even claim miracles in God's name that are often are completely fake. Sometimes, and sometimes I do think it can be the work of demons. I think often enough, though, really, it's the work of stage magic and trickery. And I think it's really important to be aware of this. And the Bible even warns about it. Folks, if you're not familiar, Lisa for Truth is a friend of mine. She's a frequent visitor to our chat during live shows. I highly recommend checking out her channel. She's an atheist, but she's a very, very calm, cool person who has a lot of interesting knowledge about the ancient world and things that I'm not necessarily aware of. Which reminds me, you guys should also go check out Skylar Fiction's channel. He was kind enough to have me on the other day, and I got a chance to talk with him and Dr. Josh of Digital Hammurabi, which is yet another channel I highly recommend people check out. Um, but that would be the situation there. Oh, there is actually other things I should probably get into. Um, just where things are going with the show. Things are good. We are on course to have Saturday night shows at this point. Or Sunday night shows, not Saturday night shows. Why did I say Sunday? Saturday night shows. Um, Brian should be joining us again soon. Chris, hopefully we can get him in again soon. Get back on the road. It's going to be out of the apartment again for the foreseeable future because of the financial considerations. Uh, but remember, if you do like what we're doing, if you want to support us, please consider giving us a like, a comment, subscribing, sharing it with your friends. For that matter, if you hate what I'm doing, feel free to give me a downvote and give me a comment too. Particularly because the reality is, and here's the great secret a lot of people don't realize, the negative votes and the negative comments also help the channel. So I win either way. Um, but yeah, let's get into my topic for tonight. Can you hear me?
Now, test, 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 test. Good. Okay, you can hear me. I don't know what happened. Technology is not my friend. Um. So apparently, Lisa was mentioning objectively subjective used to be a Pentecostal minister. Stern says it's all bunk. Um. I'm not super familiar with the Pentecostal movement, so I don't want to comment on it directly. But here's the thing I'm trying to get at. Again, you look at faith healers in particular, people who claim to heal in the name of God. And I'm not. Let me be clear. I'm not saying that God doesn't heal people. I believe He does, although I will grant the evidence for it is decidedly lacking. But a lot of the people who claim, the Earl Roberts and the Peter Popovs, who claim to heal in the name of God, don't. They use magic tricks. They use even shadier things. One of my favorite examples of just how horrible these people can get is, let me see, I want to. Yes, Peter Popoff. So Peter Popoff is very famous, not as famous anymore, although he's made attempts to get back into preaching, but famous preacher and televangelist. It was famous that during a show, he would call out people in the audience. He would know their names, the addresses, doctor's name, what they were suffering from. And they would claim God was healing them on the spot. And it was very impressive because he honestly knew intimate details about people he had never met. And eventually, a group of investigators led by James the Amazing Randy figured out what was going on. So before every show, his people would circulate in the audience and have people fill out prayer cards. You put your address on it, you put your name, you put your doctor's name, you put what you're hoping to be healed of. Then this information would be taken backstage to his wife, who had a radio transmitter, and would just read the information to Popov, who was wearing an earpiece, and then would claim that he was getting this information directly from God. And it looks very impressive, and it convinced a lot of people. But Randy and his team were actually able to listen in on the signal and played it live on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. Um, and this is a big part of the problem, and actually there's something the Bible says about this that I think is a good starting point for keeping your eyes open. Let's see, let's get the verse. Acts 8:20. Peter answered, may your money or your silver perish with you, for thinking that because you thought you could buy the gifts of God. It's a bit. It's a big no-no in the Bible to do that. And this idea, if these people have the ability to heal, it's a gift from God. And you're not to take money for the gifts of God. That's the sin of simony. It's an old sin that doesn't get talked about a lot anymore. A man for Simon Magus, who when he saw the miracles of Peter and the disciples, and offered the money to teach him what he thought was magic because he was a magician, and they named the city after him. If somebody's saying, I can heal you, but you have to give me a donation, don't listen to them. What my advice, because again, I don't deny that there is what we in the medical profession is called spontaneous remission, which is we don't freaking know what happened. Sometimes people just get better. Maybe God's part of that, maybe he isn't. But I strongly recommend that rather than go to one of these faith healers to pull it off, pray yourself. Ask your pastor to pray for you. Ask your family to pray for you. Ask your community to pray for you. Don't give people money for it. And for God's sakes, and I mean this in the most literal sense of the word, for God's sakes, if you are seriously, if you have cancer, if you have some other serious life-threatening disease, go to your doctor. Any preacher, let me say it a third time, any preacher who tells you not to go seek medical treatment for a legitimate medical condition is a false teacher, in my opinion. Because God gave us the ability to reason. He gave us the ability to understand the natural world, and part of that is understanding how to heal disease. It is not showing a lack of faith in God to trust in His creation like that. Go see a doctor. I absolutely have people pray for you. Absolutely put faith in God if that gives you comfort and gives you strength. But don't be daft enough to forsake medical treatment because of that. And a lot of these preachers will tell you to do that. And it's another warning sign. If they want you to pay them large amounts of money, or if they want you to forsake actual treatment, run. Run far, run fast. Because here's the reality. Religion is not, I would never say, and I do not believe that religion is an evil thing. Religious belief does a lot of people a lot of good. Organized religion has some serious issues. But belief itself is not a bad thing. But it is people put their faith in something they can't prove. That's a really good question. Lisa of Truth just asked me if I would do a show about Annalise Michel sometime. I would like to. I need to do some more research on that case than I have. Funny enough, I was just telling some folks I met, my upstairs neighbors actually. The movie Annalise Michel, for those of you who don't know, is the young woman, she was a German woman, as the name might suggest, who was allegedly possessed by 6 demons and was the inspiration for the movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose. My mentor, Lately Gentile, was a technical advisor on that movie, by the way. There's a lot of debate, even among exorcists and among the paranormal community, over whether or not she was legitimately possessed. The exorcist I worked with before he passed away and yeah, the Dangers of Deliverance Ministry is another part of tonight's episode, believe me. And that includes sometimes exorcism. But what I remember Father Joe telling me, there's a lot of problems with how it was handled that wasn't handled correctly. I repeat that because he was very knowledgeable, but I haven't studied the case personally enough to make much comment on it. Certainly, certain aspects of how that was done very. Certain things that happened were done badly. Whose fault that was, there may be some debate about. That she wasn't eating is certainly an issue. Yes, fasting is part of the ritual of exorcism, but the person who's supposed to do the fasting is the priest, not the person you're trying to help. And certainly you don't refuse fasting to a person. You don't refuse food to a person entirely especially somebody under psychological stress. And trust me, anyone who's undergoing an exorcism is under considerable psychological stress. You don't refuse them food. You don't refuse them medical treatment, which they weren't taking. Annalise Michelle wasn't taking her medication. She wasn't taking her food. She was refusing to eat. I've heard that they were trying. The priests and their parents were trying to get her to do those things, and she was refusing. And I've heard it both ways. I'll look into it and come back to it on another show because that is a good question. Maybe actually it might be really interesting to do a show about both Annalise Michelle and Roland Doe. For those not familiar, Roland Doe is the young boy, now a man, who was the inspiration for the movie and the original novel, The Exorcist, by William Peter Blatty. If you're interested in that story, there's actually a really excellent book called A Confrontation with Evil that delves into the church records and a lot of the other records about the situation. It has some really startling revelations. I mean, I was shocked by what happened in that case. Stephen LeChance wrote it. Yeah, Stephen LeChance is the author. Good guy, too. I had him on the show once upon a time. But, so back on point. This is one of the most common warning signs. In general, when somebody claims to have supernatural abilities, gifts from God, ask questions, because miracles happen. I'm not saying they don't. But there's a lot of magicians in the world. And there's magicians, I should clarify, there's magicians and there's con men. I'm a magician, I am not a con artist. I will do card tricks, I'll do coin tricks, I'll do mind reading tricks. With some effort, I can even do some of the psychic tricks of, I'm getting someone, da-da-da. But I tell you up front, or at the end, that I'm a magician, that this is what I'm doing. There's a great quote. I'm not going to look up who said it, but I believe it's Robert Houdin, that a magician is a actor playing the part of a magician. We magicians come forward and say, "Yeah, hi, I'm a magician. I'm about to fool you." Con men are people who use some of the exact same tricks that we do, but don't tell you they're lying. And a lot of those tricks, a lot of those deceptions, are used by people who claim to be the prophets of God. And a lot of them are used by faith healers. A very common example of my point, and this is a trick used by both psychics and faith healers, is what's called cold reading. Cold reading is a combination of what's called cold reading and the Barnum effect. And cold reading is relying on statistical odds. If I have an audience of about 20 to 30 people or more, and I say, who here lost their father, to a heart problem? Odds are pretty good that heart disease is one of the leading killers in the United States. If you're dealing with an audience of adults, somebody lost their father, and if it wasn't their father, it was you can argue grandfather, uncle, some male relation. Another part of this is leading questions and sometimes we'll call it the shotgun method, or just very clear where they'll ask two questions in quick succession, but they'll ask you, who's Mary? Oh, my mother's name is Mary. But when people come back and talk about their experience, most of the time they don't say, oh, he asked me who Mary was, I said it was my mother. It's like, oh, he told me my mother's name was Mary. It's like, no, he didn't. Because of a phenomenon called confirmation bias. People tend to remember the successes and ignore the failures. And this is another mistake a lot of people make when we talk about this kind of thing, is people have this assumption that, we're saying that people do this are stupid. No, we're really not. And another aspect of deception that magicians and con artists take advantage of regularly. People think that the smarter you are, the harder it is to fool you. That's not true. In fact, it's the other way around. The smarter you are, the easier you are to fool to somebody who understands how deception works. Let me give you an example. If I'm trying, take this away from the realm of a magician or even a faith healer into the realm of somebody who's trying to set up, they call it these days free energy machines, but the old name for it's a perpetual motion machine. If anyone doesn't understand what the perpetual motion machine is, it's a machine that just it produces its own energy. It produces more energy than it requires. You have to put into it, or it just keeps constantly generating energy endlessly, which is impossible because of the laws of thermodynamics. When you put energy into something, the amount of energy you get, to get energy from something, you have to put energy into it equal to what you get out of it, at least equal to what you get out of it. And I'm probably bungling this horribly. You can't just magically produce energy out of thin air. You can't even, that's the first law of thermodynamics, is energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only change forms, and by consequence, the same with matter. But you can't just produce new energy. You need something has to fuel it, for lack of a better word. But if I was to say, okay, I have this brand new machine that produces energy, it ionizes the solar radiation as it passes through the troposphere. A stupid person is going to get lost fast. I mean, and let's be clear, I'm entirely certain what I said was gobbledygook. People listening probably know what I said was gobbledygook. But that's because of the level of education, me coming up with things right off the top of my head. When when you're not educated, when you're ignorant, and somebody starts talking about electromagnetism and the laws of thermodynamics, one other great example of this, look at young earth creationists, who throw out a lot of scientific sounding terms, polystrata trees and all that. And they make people listen to it, because people have this idea that when you use these big, as we say, $2 words, it means you're smart. But but con artists use that to their advantage. They'll use the fact you know just a little bit about something. It's, for somebody who's trying to do fraud using electromagnetism as his excuse, he's not going to fool a physicist who spent the last 20 years studying magnetism and knows it inside and out. But if you know a little bit about magnetism, just enough to understand, to know the terms he's using, you're a perfect target. Because he can count con artists usually know their subject just enough to make their BS sound convincing, especially to somebody who also knows at least a little bit about the subject. The other good example that is back on point about false prophets is false prophets quote the Bible all the time to support what they're doing. What they'll ignore is that it may say something one verse, it'll say something very different in another verse. Particularly, a good example of the people that ticked me off when I did a video about Unleashing Truth in Chat, as done videos about, and my friend Soros the Skeptic and many other people have done videos about the Make America Straight Again conference and the New International Federation of Baptists. They hinge a lot of what they're saying on Leviticus, which talks about stoning homosexuals to death. The Bible also says to stone disobedient children to death. The Bible also talks about compassion and forgiveness and about loving your enemy, none of which is consistent with stoning people to death. Did I get muted again? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Ay, 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 ay. Okay. Okay, so I'm not sure where I cut out again, but again, con artists and false teachers will use the Bible to their advantage. And Leviticus says, stone homosexuals. On the other hand, Jesus said to love everyone. And for that matter, there's a great example. The Bible also said to stone adulterers. And there's a famous story, of course, with Jesus, who, a woman's about to be stoned to death for adultery, and that who is without sin cast the first stone. Lady Salem says Old Testament and New Testament, two different things. It should be interpreted as such. With Messiah came change, so perhaps that's why. I'm not disagreeing with you, but my point, I think the reason I keep muting is more of a problem with the headset's connection with the laptop is a little loose for some reason. I'll have to see if I can fix that later. But Lady Salem's right. There are differences between the Old and New Testament. There's a lot of differences. And you need to look at them to some extent as two different entities. And remember, at least for Christians, and no disrespect meant to Jews, that we are foremost under the laws of Christ, not under the laws of the Old Testament, which are fulfilled in Christ. Which means, if Christ said, love your enemies and do good to those, pray for those who wrong you, you should be doing that, not trying to stone people for being homosexual. But again, it's cherry pick. What you're running into with false prophets is they'll cherry pick what's to their advantage. Good biblical teachers will talk about, well, okay, here's what, I'm not saying I'm a good biblical teacher, but I think I'm better than a lot of these false ones. And it's like, I'm not saying that the Bible does not say to stone homosexuals. It absolutely doesn't. There's a bunch of things in Judaism. And yes, Lady Salem points out Jesus was a rabbi, so I would have no insult to Jews. I certainly don't mean. I've had a number of Jewish friends in my life, and still do. He says, right, it's like tell all of this to an IFB, and that's my point. But these people, you look at these people, and they can seem, especially when you get them on the right moment, on the right topic, they can seem very convincing. People look at these, particularly look at doomsday cults, and Jonestown's a perfect example at this point of how could anyone fall for that and drink the Kool-Aid, setting aside the reality that some percentage of the people that drank that Kool-Aid were forced to at gunpoint. I've seen debate on how many. There's also the reality of Jim Jones didn't start telling people to drink Kool-Aid laced with cyanide. He started in the United States fighting tooth and nail against segregation and for equal rights. He adopted children of a bunch of different ethnic backgrounds, called them his rainbow family, and said segregation is a personal topic to me because of my children. I want my children given the same education as everybody else's. And he was he fought for the right things. He fought for things that we today value, that people then valued. He didn't start out as a monster. It's very easy to look at these people in hindsight and go, oh, well, it's obvious, look at what he did. But that's coming in at the end of the story. And a lot of the modern cults, you see the same thing. And you look at certain groups. If you look at an IFB, if you look at Jehovah's Witnesses, or Mormons, to pick on three in particular, you see some of the same thing. A lot of Jehovah's Witnesses are very nice people. I mean, I have some serious issues with Watchtower, with the governing body, and I may get to that. But a lot of the members of the Jehovah's Witnesses are very nice people that are honestly believe they're trying to serve God. And keep in mind, the reason they come and knock on your door is they honestly, truly, and sincerely believe that if you don't believe that the way that they do, that very, very soon, I'm 43, in my lifetime, the apocalypse is going to happen. And everyone who doesn't agree with them is going to die horribly and be dead forever. But if you agree with them, you get to live forever in paradise. They don't want people to die. That's why they keep banging on your door. But when you get higher up, when you get to the people that run the show, it's not so pleasant. There's a huge issue people aren't talking about. Everybody talks about the Catholic Church and how they've hidden and protected child molesters for probably centuries at this point. And that's absolutely horrible. No sane person is going to justify that. I certainly am not. Although we can talk about my sanity later. But the Australian Royal Commission had a huge hearing and has fined the governing body of the Jehovah's Witnesses millions of dollars for doing the same thing. They tell their members that if somebody in your family, your son, your daughter, your mother, your father, leaves the religion or does something the religion doesn't approve of, like has sex outside of marriage, your son has sex outside of marriage, you have to show them. You're not allowed to talk to them. You're not allowed to interact with them. And if you do, you'll get kicked out as well. There are families that haven't spoken in decades even because of this policy. But people get caught up in the other things that are going on and think of, well, it's God's chosen group. Look at all the good that they're doing. Look at the way, and the other one you'll see a lot, and you'll see this very often in cults, is there's a persecution complex about it. Russia, a few years back, banned Jehovah's Witnesses as a religion. And that just fuels their beliefs. It's like, see, we're being persecuted. Yeah, Jesus said that his followers would be persecuted. It's happening just as was foretold. This is also why one of the many reasons why banning religion is a bad idea. Even religions that are destructive. You see similar issues in the Mormon faith. You see a lot of, the NIFB, not to keep beating the same dead horse, but these guys, they split off from the International Federation of Baptists because of sexual abuse scandals. And that, it starts with good intentions. It's like, they're doing horrible things. We don't want to be associated with that. People get into this mindset of the church is your family. All your friends are in the church. Your family is in the church. Your parents, your grandparents, your great grandparents, generations going back, and you don't want to leave. The Jehovah's Witnesses go back to the 19th century. The Mormons go back to the 19th century. Baptists, the IFB and the NIFB aren't nearly that old. But Baptists go back. You don't want to leave that. You don't want to be cast out. And Lady Salem said religion is a right, and people do need spirituality to cope, but false prophets and cons don't really count. You're 100% right. Thank you, and I agree. I've talked to a bunch of atheists, and at least you're one. So back, the majority of atheists I talk to, if you gave them the power, they wouldn't outlaw religion. Some of them want to start taxing churches, and I don't actually entirely think that's a bad idea. But at most, they want to educate people, and they believe that by educating people, about evolution and the Big Bang and other scientific realities, people will move away from the church on their own. But there's no idea of let's outlaw this. Because, again, it doesn't work. You drive the church out, if you outlaw a religion, it goes underground. And you feed into this us versus them mentality that cults build. They want, it's when everyone else is out to get you, it's natural to turn toward each other. Even if the other people being out to get you is manufactured. And you're not likely to leave, because if you leave, they're not going to care about you. The other people don't care about you. The other people don't serve God. You're out. You'll be cast out. You'll die. You'll die at Armageddon with everybody else. And in the meantime, you'll be part of this evil system. It's easy to look from the outside and judge a cult, but it's a lot harder to be on the inside and realize what's going on before it's too late. Sometimes too late in tragic ways. The solution to which is you need to be vigilant, you need to be aware, and sometimes even that won't help. Because the reality is, cults are good at what they do. One of the most common tactics they use is what's called love bombing. The biggest targets for cults, and the biggest targets for there's a lot of overlap between scams and cults for good reason, but their biggest targets are usually people that are in some way isolated. College students are huge targets because you're away from home, you don't know anybody. You're another good example of the way that cults work without the religion, and because I've seen people that don't understand this. They think it's all about religion, and the reality is the mindset exists whether you're talking about a religion or not. Look at multi-level marketing. Look at how they handle, groups like Herbalife or oh good heavens, what are some of the other multi-level marketing things out there? Hold on, let me look it up because it's going to bug me. I'm not saying, I'm not an expert by any means, but there are these groups where it's like you're going to buy in, you buy Amway is another example of multi-level marketing. Here we go. List. They have like videos all over YouTube talking about them. Lou the Rose, another one. There's all of these groups, and they reinforce this idea that will help you, will give you what you need to succeed, to be rich, to be successful. Okay, Lady Salem says, you want to see a New Day cult? Of Paranormal, Love, Boom, Master, and even Miracle Oil, etc. It's sickening. And I'm not familiar with that group, but this is the thing you see is essential oils, and these various remedies very much can take the place of miracles. You use this essential oil that heal anything. And the group trusts you, the group loves you, the group understands, the group will help you succeed. And when you're on your own in a big city for the first time, especially a college student, you left home, you're not living with mom and dad anymore, you're all on your own, and you have this group of people that are kind to you and welcome you in and are interested in your life. It's seductive. And that's why a lot of these people fall for it. And again, a lot of the people that join multiple level marketing groups, a lot of people who join cults, there's this myth that they're dumb or gullible. Usually it's quite the opposite. Usually they're very intelligent, they're more above average intelligence and well educated. Because again, the groups prey on that. Another common thing that you run into Because it's true, a lot of people who are a lot of people who are intelligent and well-educated know they're intelligent and well-educated. And that lends a degree of arrogance and pride that makes you more vulnerable. A really good example of this in history was Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who believed in everything under the sun. Um, one of the most famous examples of him being just completely taken in is the cunningly buried incident where two girls claimed to take photographs of fairies, and what he that on itself sounds pretty odd, but belief in fairies wasn't that uncommon in the 19th and early 20th centuries. And he was part of a group called the Theosophy movement that certainly believed in that kind of thing. But when they actually produced photographs, and pretty good for evening them up. I mean, by modern standards, they're black and white and a little grainy because that's the technology of the time. But they're not the usual blurry pictures you get of Bigfoot and things like that. It's very clear. Because of, in fact, what they were doing in some of the cases, and just using paper cutouts and things of that nature. But he had this arrogance that these working class girls couldn't possibly be fooling him. And it wasn't unjustified. I mean, Doyle was a highly intelligent, very well educated man. He was not stupid. A little gullible, arguably, but he was not a stupid. I mean, he had fought in the Boer War. He was a trained doctor, army doctor, no less. He had written a whole series of fiction and non-fiction on various important subjects. And he was nobility. He was, he's a knight. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And these were two working class girls who weren't nearly as educated as he was. The ironic thing that gives you an idea is that one of them was actually an apprentice in a photography shop, which is how she knew how to do the double exposure technique, which is how a lot of the pictures were accomplished. Doyle knew that. He dismissed it because, again, there was this arrogance. And again, cults and false prophets rely on this. And here's the news, folks. I am not a doomsayer. I believe that the end of the world is coming. Yes. I believe it's closer now than it was in the time of Christ, by virtue of the fact 10 years from now it'll be closer than it was now. And that's the way that time works. I don't know when it's going to happen. It might happen tomorrow. It might happen in 100 years. It might happen in 10,000 years. I have no bloody clue. And anyone who claim, and that's something I'll get to in a minute as well, is people who claim to know the end. Because this is another common mistake among Christians, in particular. But, as we get closer, as time goes longer, you're going to get more people like this. And the Bible warns left and right. It talks about people, how they have an appearance of godliness. It talks about how people will say, there is the Christ. Seek him in the mountains, seek him in the desert. And don't go, don't listen. We need to, as the Bible tells us, be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. When somebody presents, actually, a really good piece of advice from, and I'm not his biggest fan in the world, he can be kind of a jerk, but his advice is still sound. From Penn Jillette of Penn and Teller. He observed that the more you want to believe something, the more skeptical you should be of it. The more you want to believe something, the more you should question it. I think that's absolutely true. And because when we want, there's this idea that I mentioned before, confirmation bias. We tend to remember the successes and forget the failures. When you want to believe something, when something fits within your worldview, it's very natural to go, it must be true. But question it. Ask questions. Ask questions of the person who's telling you something. And if they don't want to answer you, and they, a true teacher, true teacher of any kind, be it a school teacher, be it a religious teacher, be it anyone who deserves the title of teacher, welcomes honest questions. I try to answer questions that are put to me the best I can. Um, but unless somebody's being really rude and disrespectful, and which doesn't serve a lot of purpose, but you need to be willing to. The person needs to be willing to answer questions, and you need to be willing to ask them. Because if what they're saying is true, they have nothing to fear from being asked about it. If they are afraid of it, something's very wrong. Jesus, and to go back again, I'm Christian. A lot of these con artists are Christian. So to go back to Jesus himself, even when Jesus was asked questions by the Pharisees that were trying to trick him and deceive him and trying to get him in trouble, he still answered the question. He gave very clever answers that satisfied both what they were looking. When they asked him if he should pay taxes, it's a trap because they're under subjugation of the Romans. By saying yes outright, he is supporting the Romans, which would have angered the Jews. By saying no, he would have angered the Romans because he's telling people not to pay their taxes. What did he say? Whose face is on this coin? Caesar's. Well, then render unto Caesar's that which is Caesar's. Give the government back its own property, essentially, which got him out of trouble. But he still answered the question. He never, when one of my favorite examples, and he did gently reprove him, but when Thomas wanted to put his fingers in the wounds from the cross, Jesus offered up his hands to let him test it. Yes, he said, "Blessed are those who do not see but believe." They didn't kick Thomas out and say you're going to hell forever because you didn't just blindly believe what you were told. Be like Thomas. Believe, but if you're going to claim, especially if you claim some earthly person is of God and has supernatural power, verify it. And if they won't let you ask those questions, if they won't let you check it, run. The last thing I want to say before I get going and go back into the nice, lovely air conditioning of my bedroom is I want to address people who claim that the Chicken Littles of the world. What do I mean by Chicken Little in case it isn't obvious? Well, Chicken Little, of course, is famous as the bird who said the sky was falling. I mean the preachers, the Harold Campings, the Charles Taze Russells, and other people who claim that the end of the world is nigh. There are signs that the Bible lays out that are generally agreed on for the apocalypse. Some of them seem to have been fulfilled, like Israel is a nation again. It's usually interpreted as a sign. Well, there's a really big one that hasn't been fulfilled. There was huge news some months back that they might be on their way to it, which is they have to rebuild the temple. Almost every prophecy scholar who says that the end times are a thing, because not all of them agree, say that the Temple of Solomon has to be rebuilt. It hasn't been rebuilt yet. And even given all of that, there's a very important quote from the Bible that people should remember. Which is Revelation, right, 16:15. Behold, I am coming like a thief. Okay, that's not the best version of it. But it says that no man knoweth the hour. There you. That's what I'm looking for. Matthew 24:36. From the King James. But of that day and hour knoweth no man, not the angels in heaven, but my Father only. Anyone who tells you they know the date of the end times is wrong, bluntly. Jesus was very clear, no one gets that information. And I've had people tell me, oh, you can't know the day and the hour, but you can know the year. There's no basis in Scripture for that. And in fact, teaching that you know the day undercuts the entire point. And I'll explain why in a minute. But I want to illustrate this. This is another really common thing you see in cults and in false teachers. Harold Camping is probably the most obvious example. And I did a whole series of predictions. I want to say at least 3 or 4 predictions of the end of the world that all have come and gone. The only thing I'll say in Camping's favor is that he admitted obviously he's wrong and stopped trying to predict it after the last time. But another guy made a lot of predictions and twisted prophecy this way and that to make it fit his predictions was Charles Taze Russell. If you don't know who Charles Taze Russell is, that's the guy who founded the Jehovah's Witnesses. And he said that Jesus, he gave something like 7 different predictions at the end of the world. The most recent prediction the Jehovah's Witnesses made of Doomsday was 1975. As these tweets put in the chat, the world ended in 1975. Yet somehow I'm still here. That's a year before I was born, I might add. But also, there's a whole big deal in Jehovah's Witnesses about 1914 and how Jesus came back to earth in 1914 and looked at all the various Christian churches and chose the Jehovah's Witnesses as the one true Christian church. And he's been ruling invisibly ever since. But there's another great quote that applies here. Particularly when people claim that they are Jesus, because people do this all the time. But the Bible says rather clearly and I'm getting near the end of the show, so I'm not going to dig up the exact verse. But that when Jesus returns, he will split the eastern sky, that every knee will bow. Not some of them, every knee. Everyone will see the return of the Messiah, according to the prophecies in the New Testament. So if anyone says, I am Jesus, I will come back, or that Jesus secretly returned in 1914, or anything else of the sort, look to the east. The sky split open. Is everyone kneeling and praising God? Because if they're not, the Bible says that they're not Jesus. It's not Jesus. Remember, many will come to say they are the Christ. He will tell you that he's in the secret places, that he's in the mountains, and that he's in the desert. Don't be fooled. I am no prophet. And let's be clear. I am no prophet. I am certainly no Messiah. I'm barely a teacher. I'm a guy who's been investigating the demonic and the paranormal for more than 20 years now, who has an idea about how some things work. There are people in the world that know more about this than I do. There are plenty of people in the world that know less, but there are undeniably people that are more aware than I am. And when I say something, and when the people in the world, and sadly the numbers getting lower because we had some good people pass away. Even when they're speaking, don't take people's word on faith. Ask questions. Think for yourself. Check what they say against scripture. Check what they say against your own rational abilities. And you know what? This isn't just a principle for religion. It's a principle for science, too. Don't take, science is not supposed to be built on blind faith. But there is a real quasi-religion of scientism, which is, people misuse that term all the time. Flat earthers will claim that the acceptance of the Lord is scientism. Young earthers will claim the acceptance of evolution is scientism. That's not what I mean. Scientism is a tendency that people have that if you say something is scientific and you put a PhD or an MD in front of it, people take it on face value. And you see this all the time with fake cures. Lady Salem said, it's not so much about who knows what, it's about being authentic and truthful. And you certainly seem to be. First time I ever watched your show. Thank you so much, lady. That's exactly what I'm going for. Is trying to the best of my ability to be honest with people and share what I've learned while being open to learning new things. I try to teach, but I think, again, just like true teachers are always open to questions, true teachers are always open to learning new things. But again, on the point of science, question, well, why do people say that's true? I said recently in my video about Ken Ham and Ken Hovind that evolution is factually based and that Christians should start accepting instead of rejecting it because it's damaging our religion as a whole. Don't take my word for it either. Clean look this stuff up. Go educate yourself. There are wonderful resources on that subject, like Biologos, which is a collection of scientific and theological arguments about evolution for Christians. Francis Collins, the former director of the Human Genome Project, the director of the National Institutes for Health, is an evangelical Christian who's also a supporter of evolution. You don't have to go to atheist sources to find the information. And again, don't take one person's word for it. Don't take things, just appeal to authority. Believing something because somebody is or seems to be an expert is a dangerous path to go. Lisa pointed out, Ken Hovind, one of the guys I talked about recently, calls himself Dr. Hovind to give himself an air of legitimacy, even though he has no legitimate claim to the title of doctor. Con artists are not stupid people, and they're not always easy to spot. Do your research. We live in the information age. You have access to information and knowledge that the greatest scholars of the Library of Alexandria could only dream of just by going to Google. And again, remember the advice from Penn and Teller. The more you want to believe something, the more you should question it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's going to wrap it up for tonight. It's really hot here in New Jersey. It's been over 90 all day. I want to go back to my air conditioning. I want to thank everybody for listening. I hope you got something good out of this. Again, let me know what you think. Put a comment in the comment section below. Good or bad, you don't have to agree with me. You can tell me I'm crazy. Trust me, you won't even be the 100th person to say I'm crazy in my life. But let us know what you're thinking. Do your homework. Lisa and Lady, thank you both so kindly for joining me in chat. I always like having some actual live feedback when I'm doing this. Remember to tune in next week. We will have a show on Sunday again. I will probably be doing another soapbox video. I had a few more thoughts I wanted to wrap up about Hovind because I didn't quite finish the thought with Hovind and Ham, and then I had plenty of other topics to get into, so it won't be entirely on that. But keep an eye out for that. Keep an eye out for the show on Sunday, and that's going to do it for tonight. Thank you all for listening. Good night, and God bless. Hmm.